Welcome back, toy fans. Our last episode was a huge hit. You guys love Wolverine and you were very clear about it. So this week, because you guys told me exactly what you liked, we will be opening up
Forge.
Wait, Forge? Who the is Forge?
Plasma quill charged.
That's right, everybody. On this week's episode of Trey the Terrible Collector, we will be unboxing the former Cheyenne Shaman and mutant master inventor, Forge. When Forge was first introduced in the comics, he was taking the place of Tony Stark as the weapons supplier for the United States government. And one of the weapons that he was working on was a gun that would turn off the powers of another superpowered individual. Um, he wasn't ready for it to see field work yet, and it still had some kinks to be worked out. But his government liaisons, Henry Peter Gyrick and Val Cooper, took it and used it to try to apprehend the mutant Rogue. Rogue was teamed up with the X-Men at this point in time, and Storm jumped in front of the blast from the gun to save her. Storm lost her powers, and she was going through quite a bit of turmoil with other things going on in her life at that point. Forge picked her up, took her back to his tower. The two had a blossoming romance that seemed to be leading to something kind of special. They had a really deep passion for each other, which was especially cool for Forge because Storm usually seduces the likes of Dracula, Black Panther, Doctor Doom, and Archon, royalty all around, and Forge was just another guy. Shortly thereafter, she found out that the weapon that took her powers was created by Forge himself. He would go on to try to win her back and get the trust of the X-Men. He would go on to join the X-Men team. Later on, he would join X-Factor, and today he's an important part of the Krakoan government that they have going on in the comics. All right, that's about enough of the introduction for our newest hero, Forge. It's impossible to talk about the success of the X-Men without mentioning Jim Lee. Jim Lee joined the X-Men in the late 80s, early 90s, and his designs became super important to the characters in general. This particular design was something that he created. It was meant to be a uniform that brought the team all together. Something that's notable is at the time, this team consisted of Havoc, Forge, Wolverine, Gambit, and then several female members as well, Psylocke, Jubilee, and Storm. You'll notice that in this series, not a single one of those female characters got a toy. They did bring in Iceman and several Wolverine characters, but I guess at the time they really didn't think female characters would sell, which is strange considering how many incredibly powerful female characters existed in the X-Men universe. But this is where we are at the time. So over here we've got some Jim Lee inspired art along with the Jim Lee inspired costume. On the back, again, as always, we've got the description of our superpowers. He has a quick draw action. We will check that out here very soon. There does seem to be some water damage, little bits of tears and things like that, so no real harm in tearing this guy open. So we have a Jim Lee card. This is from the Impel series. We have Havoc here. I'll set that off to the side. We'll get to that in a moment. And there we have Forge. I left out Wolverine so we could have a comparison to the other figures in the set. He does seem a little diminutive, a little bit smaller, almost like he's a different scale than the other figure. His shoulders are very narrow. He does have a couple of very cool things going on in terms of his design. His boots and his satchel are inspired by his Native American heritage. It's also kind of a cool paint job. It's a matte paint, so it looks a little more natural than the rest of his costume. He does have a translucent arm and leg because as he served in Vietnam, and he lost an arm and a leg and replaced them both with cybernetic parts of his own design. His bandana and his belt add a little bit of a pop of red, so that's kind of cool. The face design itself leaves a little to be desired. Nothing real interesting there. Maybe we could hope for I don't know, some sort of action face, or I don't know, some sort of intimidating pose. But here we have him in all of his glory. Let's check out his quick draw action. There we go. It seems as, yeah, it looks like his gun is actually part of the sculpt, so that kind of eliminates the use of one hand. This one has an open palm, so he's got good articulation, but his one arm is pretty much useless unless you just want to use the quick draw feature. It is kind of a cool pose, I suppose. He does have a tiny little ponytail. It's a nice detail. Good balance. All in all, not a terrible figure, but he is, I mean, just a little bit smaller than Wolverine all the way through. His chest, his shoulders. Interesting. But there we have him. Forge. Okay. That brings us to this episode's extra fact and trading card belonged to none other than Havoc, the mutant who was conspicuously missing from this toy line despite being featured on the card with the other characters. My favorite run of Havoc comics was called Mutant X, where he had died in the original mainline universe, but come back to life possessing the body of his alternate reality self. In this universe, Magneto and the rest of the X-Men had gone missing, and Havoc had become the premier superhero of the universe. He ended up having to fight and battle his wife, the Goblin Queen Madeline Pryor, who had betrayed him and the rest of the heroes to gain power in their universe. Thank you so much for tuning in for our episode on the Master Mutant Machinist Forge. Next week, we will be continuing to dig into our Uncanny X-Men Series 2 Toy Biz line. We will be opening up one of our super villains, so that should be really exciting. Continue to check us out. Make sure you guys like and subscribe for more content. And until next time, y'all have been wonderful, and I have been terrible. We'll see you again soon.